Golden crown, a symbol of triumph, of soaring ambitions realized and dreams conquered. In a realm where many boast, only a select few resonate with genuine achievement. Enter Rolex, a beacon of success, an emblem of human mastery. From world leaders to musicians, Fortune 500 CEOs to aviators, from movie directors to explorers, you will find a Rolex on the wrists of remarkable individuals that, true to that one ad, are those who change the world. In a world flooded with cheaper, arguably more accurate alternatives, Rolex stands tall as the ultimate flex. It's like buying a Ferrari when a bicycle will do. Except this timepiece doesn't just keep time, it keeps your status soaring sky high. According to watch forums, strapping on a Rolex isn't just about telling time, it's about making you feel like you've conquered Everest in a bespoke Italian suit. For die-hard connoisseurs, it's not just a purchase, it's a badge of honor earned through blood, sweat, and swag. But that wasn't always the case. Back when it was founded in 1905, Rolex was just a scrappy underdog named Wilsdorf and Davis, taking on the big guns like J.J. Lecoultre, Patek Philippe, and Cartier. They weren't even a global trademark until 1913. This level of brand commitment or bonding cannot be manufactured or bought. It has to be earned over decades and centuries, which is why the way Rolex built its brand is remarkable and its campaigns unforgettable. From being a late entrant to a watch market that was crowded with all of these bigwigs at a time when wristwatches were considered a joke, to being the leader in luxury watches, occupying a quarter of the market, Rolex has come a long way. But that journey started with the intersection of a young English endurance swimmer, the birth of the world's first waterproof watch, and a very public failure of Rolex's first marketing campaign. Stick around as we uncover how Rolex turned a daring swim across the English Channel into a stroke of marketing genius. This is an awesome campaign breakdown of the launch of the first Rolex Oyster. This is the awesome channel where we break down the world's most remarkable and meaningful brand campaigns and what makes them so great. So do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Now let's get into it. To better understand the Rolex Channel Swim campaign and its impact on the world, let's go back in time. No pun intended. The early 20th century, a time of seismic shifts and global turmoil. From the women's suffrage movement to the Chinese Revolution, from the devastation of World War I to the grip of the Spanish flu and the despair of the Great Depression. These were the headlines that defined this period. If you lived in this era, your primary source of information about these global events would be printed journals, radio if you were lucky, newsreels, and social gatherings. At this time, watches served a utilitarian purpose. Oh, and watches usually meant pocket watches. Wristwatches were a joke in polite society. Watches' accuracy, durability, and reliability was a product of this generation's technological advancement, meaning that it lacked sorely, but starting to get better. Despite the shortfalls, the need for humans to tell the time wherever they are drove the demand for watches as a desirable product. So you can see why getting a chronometric certification was such a flex for a watchmaker. Also, owning a watch, not super universal in the early 1900s. Many people relied on public clocks or church bells to tell the time, especially in rural areas or among lower income populations. At the time, watches were initially considered luxury items and were primarily worn by the affluent or those in certain professions that required precise timekeeping, such as military officers or businessmen. Watches were a rich person's thing. Say you're Sidney Garland, the ad man of choice for Rolex who has to sell these exquisite timepieces. Who would be your perfect buyers? What would be the buyer persona? While we do not have surveys or demographic statistics, we can make a few assumptions as to who would buy these timepieces. I've taken the liberty of constructing 3 such people from different walks of life. Victor Sterling, the esteemed gentleman. Victor Sterling, a wealthy aristocrat from London, leads a luxurious lifestyle filled with high society events and leisurely pursuits. Seeking accessories that reflect his refined taste and uphold his family's legacy, he values luxury, craftsmanship, and exclusivity in his purchases. Victor's motivation is to maintain his esteemed status within society, making his buying behavior influenced by elegance, quality, and personalized service. Eleanor Blackwood, the adventurous explorer from New York City, thrives on daring expeditions and seeks reliable timekeeping instruments that can withstand the rigors of exploration. Valuing durability, functionality, and accuracy in a watch, she requires models specifically designed for outdoor use. Eleanor's motivation is to push the boundaries of exploration and expand human knowledge, leading her to prefer watches from reputable outfitters with rugged construction and water resistance. Henry Chambers, the savvy businessman. Henry, a successful businessman from Geneva, prioritizes professional image and success in his fast-paced lifestyle. Seeking watches that reflect his professionalism and attention to detail, he values precision, reliability, and understated elegance. Motivated by business growth and financial success, Henry's buying behavior is influenced by classic designs, versatile features, and impeccable craftsmanship, often choosing models with complications tailored to his business needs. It should be noted that without exception, Victor, Eleanor, and Henry would go for pocket watches over wristwatches, reflective of the times they lived in. While wristwatches did exist, they weren't perceived as reliable. Worn on the wrist, they would often be subjected to the elements and their delicate movements could be damaged, leading to errors in timekeeping. So, they were mostly worn by women, safe inside the home. Men went outside and wore pocket watches tucked away in the vest of their three-piece suit, or go to war wearing whatever this monstrosity is. So, like Sidney Garland, to sell watches better, we must now appreciate the cultural landscape within which the burgeoning wristwatch industry and our buyers lived through. And we can see three key trends that we can leverage: an awesome pace of technological advancement and innovation, the rise of consumerism and strategies of mass persuasion, and the ironical consumption of women in a consumerist society that blended self-empowerment through self-theatricalization. Let's take a look at these in a little more detail so we can understand how they were the perfect launchpad for Rolex to run its campaign successfully. The early 20th century witnessed the emergence and broad acceptance of groundbreaking technologies transforming transportation, communication, and industry, including automobiles, airplanes, radios, telephones, motion pictures, and electric power systems, aided by the advent of the Industrial Revolution. This rising tide also impacted the watch industry, and Rolex was able to capitalize on it to bet big on wristwatches. Hans Willdorf believed that it was a matter of time before people would stop using pocket watches as long as the common barrier to its durability against the elements was overcome. And that's exactly what Rolex did with the Oyster in 1926, arguably the world's first wristwatch immune to dust, moisture, heat, and vibration. In the 1920s, the Western world took pride in the fact that they had access to creature comforts that would make a king from 200 years ago jealous. Until the Industrial Revolution, the question was how to create products fast enough for the growing number of customers. But that changed very fast. The bigger question for industrialists now was, how do you sell to a generation that has everything it needs? Well, you focus on the wants. As newsman Samuel Strauss, editor of Globe Mail, wrote in 1924, consumptionism is bringing it about that the American citizen's first importance to his country is no longer that of citizen, but that of consumer. Fun fact, Prohibitionism was created to help people focus on their desires and wants by banning alcohol, which was perceived to be a dampener of consumptionism. Samuel Strauss wrote, "The more things men have, the more they need. This is the working philosophy of consumptionism. The more drink men have, the less things they need. Consequently, we have the 18th Amendment. Samuel Strauss, by the way, had a profound impact on the foremost thinker of social persuasion and public relations, Edward Bernays, who famously applied this principle successfully to revive a dying tobacco industry. In the 1920s, media spotlit women as commodities, fueling consumerism. Hollywood portrayed the new woman, merging celebrity fascination with consumer culture. While cinezines showcased provocative poses, newsreels highlighted real female role models like Amelia Earhart and Mercedes Gleitzer, the star of our story. However, you can clearly see the delicate balance between celebrating these women's achievements and reinforcing traditional norms. In the 1920s, newsreels depicted Gleitzer with an admiration for her determination, yet struggled with presenting her active, semi-clothed body, often in swimwear, and its implication for social status. To mitigate perceived threats, some media portrayed her as a non-threatening girl, emphasizing her pluck and endurance. She was likened to a maiden or mermaid, dubbed a daughter of Neptune in one newsreel. Descriptions often highlighted her youth and prettiness, presenting her as a refined office girl adorned with trophies of her swimming conquests. Someone who was tough enough to do superhuman feats in the water while also meeting the objectified conformist template of a woman to the world. All of these trends bring us to the perfect brew that sets up the most amazing campaign the world had seen at the time. To better understand the creative execution, I would like to borrow Jordan Rogers' framework for sports marketing, because ultimately, that is what this English Channel Swim campaign was, a fantastic case in sports marketing. There's our hero and conversation starter, Mercedes Gleitzer, the daughter of Neptune, about to be immortalized in a moment in time, attempting to be the first British woman to cross the channel and make history. Wearing on a person the product being highlighted, the Rolex Oyster, the world's first ever waterproof watch. With the eyes of the Western world upon her, along with every newsreel, journal, cinezine, and print media house. Let's break this down in more detail. Mercedes Gleitzer was already a damn hero. A bilingual stenographer by profession, she was inspired to be an endurance swimmer, harboring ambitions of being the first female ever to cross the English Channel. But that's not what made her a hero. What immortalized her was her grit and resilience. Mercedes started her attempts to achieve the record from 1922, a full 5 years and 8 attempts before she finally succeeded. All through those years, she tried and failed until the shot at the record of being the first woman to cross the English Channel was taken away from her by German Gertrude Ederle in 1926. But this did not dishearten her. Being the true sports person that she was, she set her sights to be the first English woman to attempt the crossing of the English Channel. With the hopes and eyes of the entire world and her country on her, she gave up her job as a secretary and began training full-time for 3 months before her 7th swim. She completed the swim in 15 hours and 15 minutes on October 7th, 1927, on a 7th attempt. The world rejoiced, and we all now love Rolex and revere her. Only that this is not the attempt that immortalized her and the brand in the annals of the history of human achievement. She wasn't even wearing the watch in this one. It was actually the 8th attempt that set it up. You see, a mere few days after a successful channel crossing, a lady came forward saying that she broke the record by crossing the channel in 13 hours and 10 minutes. This was later challenged and refuted, but it raised the questions of the legitimacy of Mercedes' swim attempt, and the English Channel Swimming Association refused to acknowledge it. The daughter of Neptune was furious. The CSA asked Gleitzer to sign an affidavit verifying she completed the swim unaided. Gleitzer, the badass, refused on principle and was quoted as saying, "The best thing to restore the prestige of British women channel swimmers in the eyes of the world would be for me to make another channel swim." And thus she embarked upon what became known as the Vindication Swim. This was the moment where her heroism would be at its peak. A moment that everyone is going to watch with more scrutiny because of all the drama and the controversy. And with the eyes of the Western world following Mercedes for her vindication swim, Rolex knew they had an opportunity to immortalize their product forever. As we mentioned before, in the early 1900s, pocket watches ruled the market, while wristwatches were seen as a delicate fashion item for women. Rolex, under Hans Wilsdorf's vision, redefined watches as a durable companion for sporty individuals, unlike today's perception of them as luxury items. The Oyster watch, designed for toughness, epitomized the sport watch with its water, dust, heat, cold-proof attributes and precise features. Upon learning about the vindication swim, Hans Wilsdorf saw it as a way to promote Rolex and promptly offered Gleitzer a Rolex Oyster wristwatch for the swim in exchange for her testimonial. So, Mercedes wore an Oyster during a risky 10-plus hour channel swim in November, which not only settled the debate for the best waterproof wristwatch, but also immutably created the Rolex brand position to be one of reliability, toughness, and grit for the world. Which brings us to the 8th attempt. A mere 2 weeks after successfully crossing the English Channel, where she collapsed of exhaustion after swimming off-season in the cold, here she was, a hero, determined to make the world stop and take note. However, unlike her previous swim, the fog on this day was minimal, and she had a full entourage accompanying her. Numerous chase boats filled with journalists, friends, and well-wishers, all naturally acting as witnesses and propagandists for this superhuman feat. Mercedes failed in this attempt owing to brutally cold waters, but the English Channel Swimming Association reinstated her record after seeing how efficiently she swam in such cold waters. I mean, after witnessing her determination and grit, few could doubt her legitimacy, and fewer still would doubt the legitimacy of the Rolex Oyster. One of the many journalists following her made an incredible discovery and reported it in the London Times as follows. Hanging around her neck by a riband on the swim, Miss Gleitzer carried a small gold watch, which was found this evening to have kept good time throughout. Mercedes, of course, in a letter personally to Hans, expressed that she is delighted with it. Mercedes immortalized herself with her failed English Channel swim, but she did something even more special for the watch industry. In one fell swoop, she signaled the end of pocket watches and positioned Rolex as the wristwatch of the future that can withstand the toughest conditions and still function. This campaign changed the watch world forever. Gone were the days when people preferred pocket watches and considered wristwatches as delicate and fragile accoutrements. With the Channel swim, Rolex became known not only as the world's first waterproof watchmaker, but they started to create this brand equity machine that kept appreciating what the Golden Crown stood for. Rolex instantly created a unique positioning of being the king of sports watches. What was more impressive with the campaign was how Rolex was able to turn this failed vindication swim into a positive. Sports is the greatest leveler, and by earning the trust and faith of someone like Mercedes, Rolex became revered as the go-to wristwatch brand for the world's pioneers. Rolex continued to apply these advertising campaigns around its waterproof attributes when they got the actress Evelyn Leigh to pose with her Rolex submerged inside a fishbowl to hammer home the point that there is no competition for Rolex. This had set in motion a series of events that has led Rolex to where it is today. In the following years, Rolex repeated this feat by collecting extreme athletes and sports personalities as their brand ambassadors, thereby continuing to reinforce the idea that a Rolex is worn by people who impact the world and change it forever. Success on a whole another level, allowing them to price it not just as any other watch, but a unique timepiece that represents a time that a buyer would like to remember, usually a major milestone or success. You can continue to see it in the later years where Rolex ads post self-selecting copy, You wear a Rolex when you negotiate in Geneva, or are a world leader, or the pilot flying the Concorde to break the sound barrier, while their brand ambassadors wear Rolexes in extreme conditions like trekking Mount Everest or diving to the deepest point in Marina Trench or the first transatlantic flight. Today, Rolex enjoys the fruits of the labor of these campaigns. It controls roughly a quarter of the market, towering over other brands with an annual revenue of about 8 billion US dollars. It has been immortalized in culture through movies and TV shows. It has become the Ferrari of watches, where people celebrate finally getting the call. The crown representing the five-letter word, almost ubiquitous across the world's biggest stages in sports and human achievement. Funny to think that all of this association with grit, success, and overcoming adversity started with the failed attempt of a woman to cross the English Channel. Makes me think that Rolex does not mean success, but rather what it takes to be successful. Because success is not guaranteed, but resilience, toughness, and grit does. And you need oodles of that to even have a shot at success.